Welcome to the SEEK23 podcast, featuring some of our favorite podcasters, recorded live at the Spoke Street Media booth during SEEK 2023 in St. Louis. We hope these give you a glimpse of the energy and passion from the conference and help you in your faith journey. Enjoy.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Kelsey. What's up?
We are here at SEEK23 at the Spoke Street Media booth, recording a very special Blessed Is She podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Father Mark Mary, part of the Blessed Are We connection here.
This podcast is very special because neither Father Mark Mary or I are Beth and Jenna, who usually host the Blessed Is She podcast. But, I mean, I feel like, Father, you have been on a lot of Blessed Is She podcasts. Maybe you should just host this. You're the old pro.
I do love the opportunity to be part of Blessed Is She.
I think you've been on like 4 or 5, something
I gotta
like
keep
that.
showing up, so you keep giving me chapstick.
Yeah, Jesus is the bomb.
Yeah.
Father Mark Mary's favorite. You've also been on Saint Stories. I think that's really where you got your start a couple years back on a little YouTube series on Blessed Is She.
Yeah, things were going on. I was just doing my little YouTube video thing, and then all of a sudden I did a Saint Stories with Kelsey Dassens.
It's like life before and after Saint Stories was never the same.
Yeah, that's my documentary.
You've also traveled with us a lot. You and I have done a couple of retreats, revivals together. That's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it feels a little bit like we're doing something like that right now.
Something like that, yeah. Minivan, Spoke Street Media, podcast booth, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So good to be with you though at SEEK.
You too, Kelsey.
SEEK is actually, it's like really surreal to be back here. Because it wasn't too long ago that I was a college student myself at SEEK. Do you know my little SEEK story?
I may have heard it, but I'd love to hear it again.
So basically, I came to SEEK. I was doing it a lot in college. We went, I think, 3 out of the 4 years. The first year was probably my sophomore year. And I came my junior year when it was like the full SEEK in Indianapolis. We were in Michigan, so we like bussed a bunch of people down. And it was really like super exciting. And it was Christmas break, so everybody was feeling good. And I remember going into the like big adoration night before the keynote. I was sitting there with all my friends. We're like dancing, having a good time. And the introvert in me is like, okay, I just need to take a minute by myself. So I sat down and made the mistake of checking my email because that's what people do. And I opened up an email from this company that I'd been interviewing to intern for over the summer. And it'd been like this really intense, prestigious process to like get this big position that I was hoping for, and they let me know that they were going to go with somebody else. So I was like, oh my gosh, so disappointed. It'd been like so many months in the making and just kind of like fell apart. And then it was already January and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do for the summer. So I just felt really stuck. And I remember, just taking that to the Lord and like mustering up a little tiny, like, Jesus, I trust in you during adoration, and just being able to pray with that and surrender a little bit to that. And then going back to school that semester. And, back up.
What year were you at this point?
I was a junior.
Okay.
I was a junior. So then after, I'm like really disappointed. It's like hard for me to kind of, deal with this. And I'm praying and trying to give it to the Lord. And then I think it was that same night or the night after they announced where they were going to have the next SEEK the following year, because it's always an exciting thing that they do. And I'm like, okay, senior year, we got this. This is going to be like our last ride. It's going to be so fun. Like, keep this SEEK thing going. And I remember sitting there and looking at the screen as they're like doing this big countdown, and then it's like really exciting, 3, 2, 1. And then the first thing I see is a cactus. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it says Phoenix, Arizona. And I turn to my friend and I'm like, this has been fun, but no chance we're like moving across the country basically to go to this SEEK, because we're in Michigan. So it's like another world. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll live it up while we can here, but no chance our school's going to send us. And then I go back to school, randomly apply for some other internships, end up interning for the summer in Phoenix, meeting Jenna, my now boss, Beth, my coworker, who end up offering me a job with Blessed Is She after I graduate, pray about it, move to Phoenix, end up at the Focus conference in Phoenix, boothing with Blessed Is She. And it's just like so crazy to think about everything that the Lord did and like how that all came together just with like my little tiny surrender. Mm-hmm. And I like look back and I'm just like so grateful that the Lord, took that little bit that I gave him, and kind of unraveled this like beautiful plan that he had for my life.
Yeah, I love that, Kels. And like the theme, right? What we're gonna be talking about is trusting. And trusting the Lord. And it sounds like, and I think it's a beautiful thing, right? Because what God was doing in your life already as a junior in college, you were maybe like the trust wasn't full yet. It was maybe in seed form, but it was seed enough for you to be able to pray, Jesus, I trust in you.
Totally.
And I think that's kind of one way we want to look at it, right? So okay, there's a situation, there's something that's not really happening the way you want it to happen. Okay, we cry out to the Lord, Jesus, I trust in you. And as you continue to stay in that relationship, you continue to follow him, you give him time to actually show his trustworthiness. And so the mix of all of these sort of things that you didn't kind of foresee, they weren't part of your plans, they weren't kind of how you thought it was supposed to look. I think you end up now kind of in a situation even better than you probably would have if you were left to your own devices.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I think about how, like being a junior and being at this conference and, experiencing this disappointment or like a shattered plan of what I had for my life. And it seemed like so big, and how, even in that, the only thing I really knew how to do was like say this small little prayer. It was like all I could do, and how beautifully the Lord has like taken that and just like given me this like wonderful life. And I even think about like being in college and, like basically begging the Lord in like the early years of college to like call me to religious life because, I'd come from a broken family and I didn't really see that like route for myself. And the thought of like being loved in that way was scary. And so, I just like so badly wanted the Lord to call me to himself. That looked like the easy way out for me. And in a lot of ways, this internship in college looked like the easy way. It was like well paid. It was going to be, I could live at home, save up money, like do the normal career thing. But that's not what the Lord had for me. And so the Lord like called me to Phoenix to Blessed Is She. And now I'm engaged to the most wonderful man I've ever met. And, preparing to get married and just like in awe of everything that the Lord has done.
One of the great works of, it begins in the Old Testament, and one of the great works of those who are following the Lord, right, is not just to trust, but also to remember his previous trustworthiness.
Yes.
I think it's Psalm 139 where there's this whole litany of he did this because his love endures forever, his love endures forever, his love endures forever. So you have this experience in your life where you've seen God provide, and to do something to show his trustworthiness. But you're a young woman and life is still happening. There's still lots of things that are happening where you kind of almost like he's putting, like you have to trust him again.
Totally.
Have you found some way, either remembering, thinking back on how he's brought you to this point? Has that helped you now encounter new things that happen, new kind of surprises or even disappointments? How, like, what does that look like now? And it's okay if it's like still in process, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. Looking back on consolations has been huge for me. Even like my fiance and I are planning a wedding, and I'm not sure if anybody here is like engaged or has planned a wedding before, but I was like, my gosh, this is like, I feel like more intimidating than going to college. It's so expensive. Like the sticker shock of like, how are we going to pay for things? And like, he's in a new job and like things are unsure, and it was, hard to kind of wrap our mind around it. And from the jump, like we were trying to DIY a lot of things. And so we were like, we're going to do the Spotify thing and just like not have a DJ. And then where we're having our reception, they're like, well, we don't have a sound system, so you have to rent one. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So I'll just see what a DJ is going to cost. And so I sent a couple of emails asking for some quotes. And I get an email back like the next day from a local guy who we kind of know casually. And he said, "Hey, I'm available for your date, and like an anonymous donor has paid for your entire package." And I was like, my gosh. Like at that point, we were just like two kids trying to get married, and we just like really consoled and moved by someone's generosity to do that for us, that we said like, okay, this is like, the Lord is telling us something here. Like he's always going to provide. He's like blessing this union, this relationship that we have, our vocation. And that was just like a real indication of like his extreme generosity, that we were like, this is, we're going to really rely on this. He's always shown up for us in the past. He's going to keep showing up for us. So we've been like looking back at that as times have gotten like, it's gotten stressful, and you get like, stressed about details or things like that, as just like such a small testament to his faithfulness. And there are so many other examples in my life that he's done that, of just like, he's been faithful in the past. So even if I feel like, he's not close to me, or I don't know the next thing to do, like I just need to do, like just to stay with him and do the next right thing. And I think Father Mike talked about that in his keynote, where it really stuck with me, of just the example of Abraham being the father of faith. And he wasn't the father of faith because he was like super well-versed in whatever, or like got these great revelations. He was the father of faith because he was obedient and he did what the Lord told him to do. And I see that so much in my life. My faith has looked like just like following the Lord in the small things. When I was in college and I had no idea like what the next couple of years could look like, just like being able to surrender a little bit to him, and doing like, okay, even though I'm disappointed in this moment, I'm going to keep following you, and him just like blessing me so abundantly.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. To kind of put it in another lens, we talked about how faith in action. Was it the word faith in action is obedience?
Yeah.
But that again, that's like what trust in action. Trust in action, like trust when we actually live it. What it looks like is obedience. Is continue to follow the Lord. Because with a lot of things in life, when things aren't going the way we want them to in the timeline, the temptation, the tendency is to control and to do what we want to do, or kind of like to make it happen. And just to be obedient, to be faithful, and to allow the Lord to continue to lead us is 100% the call. Can I riff for a minute on this?
Please do.
Because I feel
riff. Yeah.
I feel really strongly about it, and it's one of the things I go to a lot is at the beginning of the catechism, right? It's after the fall, all subsequent sin is the result of disobedience and a lack of trust in God's goodness. And so trust is the foundation and sort of the core, and in all of obedience and all of following the Lord and all of staying that in the relationship with him is going to be the fruit of trust, and trust in his goodness ultimately. Because I really, it's a gift, it is a gift ultimately. It's a work of grace in our lives to be able to trust him, especially with the hard stuff. And it's one of the gifts he's given me.
Yeah.
And I think it's also just part of the nature of living poverty, chastity, obedience, of following him as a Franciscan in this way. Part of the privilege, the outcome of it is like, I really trust God.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm always obedient. Doesn't mean I'm always faithful. Absolutely not. But like deep down, I actually trust him. And when life is happening and difficult things are happening, or when people are bringing to me their difficult things, I don't know how God is going to reveal his trustworthiness. But I've literally like risked my entire life on it, and I would do it again and again and again, that he is who he says he is, and that he is faithful, and that in my own life, in my own experience, the experience of salvation history, even what you're sharing, like all of the evidence points to his trustworthiness.
Yes.
And again, I don't know what it's always going to look like in my life or those who I walk with, but I am totally deeply with all that I am convicted that he is trustworthy. But we have to understand it in a couple ways, because for the Christian, trust and hope is not just like a kind of like a poor or a weak or a cheap optimism, and it's not instant gratification.
Yes.
So when people are bringing to me one of the struggles a lot, like they bring to me a struggle with unfulfilled desires of infertility, of sickness, things like that. the answer I can't give them is no, you'll get better. No. In 3 weeks, what you want, how you want it is going to happen. Like, it's not, we can't fall back on, and we kind of can tend to do that, even in how we try and encourage each other with a bit of like a cheap optimism. No, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, but we don't exactly know like the mode of how he's going to show his trustworthiness or the timeline. But we have the radical confidence in who he is, and that whatever desire is there, he will fulfill. He will fulfill.
Yes.
And then the second one, is it's just the nature of life of to have this instant gratification approach to our relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, like if I am faithful and if I pray and if I do this, he is going to answer this intention and this prayer in 54 days when I do my novena or whatever it is.
Totally.
But when we see with Abraham, what we see with the people of God, of Israel, is sometimes they're following him, and sometimes the promise isn't fulfilled until after they're dead, until centuries. Yeah. But nonetheless, God has eternity, and we have to give him eternity. Or you can say this, he's given us eternity, we have to give back to him. I think that's just. And just a last thing, because it's on my heart it's kind of a word from Advent for me. Right? Advent is a preparation for the two comings of Christ. His coming in history, the nativity, right? But also his coming in glory. And it's a season of hope. And what the Lord really, really convicted me of is like, it really is true that when he comes again, it'll all make sense.
Yeah.
That when he comes again, like he has promised that every tear will be wiped away. And no matter what my own personal struggle is, those around me, my family members, the world, like that is true. Mm-hmm. The Lord has said, every tear will be wiped away. And again, every plan, every way, every design, it's just all going to click and it's all going to make sense. But with his help, we do just have to give him permission, and we have to give him time to reveal and to show his trustworthiness in whatever's going on.
Yeah. My friend, who everybody here probably knows, Beth Davis, always says like scripture is a down payment on like what God is going to do in your life. You see in scripture like the miracles that he works, the fulfillment of all of his promises, and that is like your down payment, your confirmation that he's trustworthy. He like raised people from the dead. He's going to work a miracle in your life. Someone shared this with me, and it's given me like a lot of freedom and, permission, and kind of reframed how, I can trust the Lord. Is they said there's this common phrase, I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard it, but people like to say like, oh, God's not going to give you more than you can handle. Like, oh, if he's giving you hard stuff, it's just because you're strong. And what they shared was like, when you think about it, that's actually not true. That's not biblical. That's not like really in line with how we live as Christians, because if God only gave us what we could handle ourselves, then we would just do everything ourselves. And what he's inviting us to, especially in these seasons of like disappointment or suffering or struggle, when, it's hard to trust the Lord, he's inviting us to just like give it to him, to surrender to him. Because obviously, he can handle it, and he brings us to the end of ourselves so we can rely more deeply on him. And it's in this reliance, and I've seen this so much in my own life, it's in this complete, total reliance where like our life really flourishes, because then you see, it's like looking back at these moments of consolation where it's like, there is no way I could have done that myself. But God showed up and he filled in all the gaps, all the empty places in my life, and I'm better off than I would have been had I been left to my own devices.
And I think one of the great scriptural examples and models of his faithfulness, as I referenced, is the journey of the people of God out of Egypt to the Promised Land, the years in the desert, right? And the Lord, as a sign of his faithfulness, that he was with them, He went before them, right, by fire at night, by cloud at day, and he gave them bread from heaven. He gave them manna, and all of this was to sustain them and to help them continue to make the journey, right? And Pope Francis in Lumen Fide, which is his first encyclical, he says something along these lines that, like in the midst of suffering, what we don't need is just an explanation. What we don't just need is like the answer, if you will, like, here's why suffering happens, or here's how you can trust God. But what we need ultimately is a presence that's with us for the journey,
Yeah.
Right. And as we continue our own pilgrimage in the desert of life, he has given us the new manna, the new bread from heaven. He's given us a presence for the journey, which is himself. And so he does invite us, and he asks us to trust and to give him time, but he's also with us. Like, he's with us in the Eucharist, he's with us in prayer, he's with us through the word, he's with us living within our souls by baptism. And he invites us not just to walk with him, but even at times and many times to let him carry us, right?
Yes.
And so the presence for the journey isn't just somebody like walking side by side, whatever, like a little buddy, not just like a road trip buddy, like, but he's also like the one who desires, he's our Father who wants to carry us when it's the most difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And as, been praying about this podcast, and even last night, like sitting in the stadium with 17,000 other people worshiping the Lord, just like kind of thinking about everything the Lord's done in my life since the last time I was like in an adoration like this in a big stadium in some city in the US. I was really just thinking, like, what would I go back and tell myself at 19, 20, sitting at these conferences, and like what would be the one thing I want to share, like, with the college women here? And I think I just really, like, in the depths of my heart, want to tell people, like, your life is going to be so much better than you could dream. And it's not in a way that it's like, oh, I'm going to like get all these things and like my life's going to look really beautiful on Instagram, and like all of a sudden I'm going to go home and have a bunch of friends. It's going to be better in the sense that, like, the deeper your relationship is with him, the more your suffering has meaning, the more your suffering forms you and builds you up and brings you closer to him, which gives purpose to your life. And so, like, even, sharing here about how how in awe I am of what the Lord has done. Like, there have been times like college ending with COVID and, never coming back from spring break. And that was the end of my college experience. And then moving to Arizona for this great job that I love, but like many, many lonely months of being in a new city without any friends and, not really having anybody else but the Lord. And, just being able to, be in that season, but to be in that season with him, I can like look back at that now and be like, thank you, Jesus, for that time, because you use that to form me, use that to heal me, deeper parts of my heart that maybe wouldn't have, come up to the surface had I not been in that season with him. So I really just want to encourage, these women here, these college students here, to just like keep leaning in, keep, being with the Lord, inviting him into those places where, there's suffering, there's loneliness, there's temptation. And without sounding cliche, like I can just tell you, like, how the Lord has changed my life is just so much more than I could even, put to words. So.
Retweet. Agree.
Father, I'm not the only one that's been called to the desert, from Michigan to Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah. You've been to the desert a couple times.
Yeah.
Not Phoenix.
A couple times. Multiple deserts. The one in Utah is what you're talking about. Yeah. What do you want to know?
I don't know. We have this little Lenten devotional, Born a Fire for Men. People keep asking. They keep coming to the booth like, oh, what is this? Yeah. So could you give a little pitch? Could you share a little bit?
Of course, I'm grateful. Cal's going to make fun of you because you just invited all of the women to trust. I'm like, what about the dudes?
Yeah, what about the dudes?
You came around to it. I always get in trouble with Michelle Benzinger from the Abiding Together podcast about doing stuff with like St. Francis, then leaving out St. Clair. So I'm learning typical. As well. So this is the first Blessed Is She CFR crossover in a
the first
concrete way.
Production from Blessed Are We.
Blessed are we, exactly. So Father Innocent, who's one of the friars, and just as good as it gets.
As good as it gets.
As good as it gets, yeah. As I mentioned to you, someone recently referred to them as the nicest person they've ever met, and checks out.
Checks out.
But also incredibly deep and really gifted, particularly with walking with men and leading them to grow in their identity. And so part of what we do is we do like an actual like concrete trip with Core, who's also here at SEEK. We take like a 3-week trip into the desert. But also, like, you know, that's we're able to do it concretely, but life kind of has it in a lot of spiritual ways. But ultimately, why we do it, we don't just do hard things to do hard things. And there can be a tendency, especially for men, to just kind of focus on we're dudes, and so we're going to do hard things because that's what dudes do, and just kind of like whatever it is. But we go into these hard places, and we do this to actually be cared for and to experience what it means to be a son first and foremost. And so taking the lessons from the desert, taking the lessons that Father Innocent's learned as he's been forming and walking with men for really almost a little bit less than a decade, I guess, is we put together kind of the Born of Fire kind of devotional, right, to help men kind of continue the journey of their own identity as son, as brother, as son, as brother, as man, ultimately as spouse, as mystic. And I think his way of framing what this means and what this looks like is as good as it gets. And so I know for me, just walking with him, learning from him, going to the desert with him, it's been, it's just really insightful and really helpful. And so hopefully, you know, we did pretty good last Lent, and it helped a lot of guys. So yeah.
And I mean, I'm a girl, obviously, but last year we were coming out with this, and I love Father Innocent, the CFRs, so I was really excited about just the idea of collaborating with them. And so when the book came out, I was like, well, I should probably read this because, you know, we're going to be selling it and we're going to be sharing about it. So I want to know what the deal is. And I felt like it was a little window into Father Innocent's heart, which is always a delight. And I read it like sitting on my couch at my house in 2 sittings. And I, like, every once in a while would see my roommate who was sitting there with me just doing her own thing, like getting out her phone. She kept trying to record me because I was just like sitting there reading it and like audibly saying, wow, this is so good. So that was really sweet. But I really think like reading this about like the identity of a man and like who he's called to be, and that encouragement really gave me a lot of clarity of like who I am as a woman, because it's so like complimentary. Not saying all you gals should like go get Born of Fire, because we also have New Wine, a Lenten devotional for women, which is amazing. But I just think like this book has, you know, changed so many men's lives, and it's just a really, really beautiful testament. And I can just like feel the goodness. And I ended up like getting it for every guy I knew. So any ladies out there listening, if you're thinking of a particular guy, it's definitely a good catch. So
and thanks to and like the mystery of God, right? That this from the friars, our men's devotional was put out by Blessed is she. I asked Jenna and the team to make a separate landing page website, because like here's this thing for dudes on the desert, Born of Fire, and then you show up on a website and it's all like lavender and pink and pastels. Like, well, maybe that's not what we're going for. So I think that's still available. bornofirebook.com. Cool. Or blessedisshe.net Lent. We also have a few copies here, and special announcement. The first 3 guys to the Blessed is She booth, 936, starting now, will get a free copy of Born of Fire book. So tell your friends, text your guy friends, tell them to head over there. They'll help you out. Do the other women working the booth know that?
I let them know like 5 minutes before we started. So they've been ready.
Roll up. Oh, I'm here for the free book. Like, What?
So just really, really excited that this is going to be in the hands of so many more guys this Lent. Were there any particular like experiences that guys had last year that you found moving? Because you were meeting with people, right? Talking about
we don't really do that while we're in the desert.
Okay.
We meet with them after and stuff like that. It's pretty much, it's always kind of it's I wouldn't say it's always the same, but it is just one of the things that Father Innocent really emphasizes, particularly because we do like our holy hours. So we go in we're backpacking, right? And so we're in the back country, and we do Mass and holy hour in the morning. And so this year it was as low as like 6 degrees. And so really you're trying to make a holy hour, and you're sitting still for the whole hour, and it's 6 degrees. Like you're not really going to be able to like meditate and to reflect and to do like Lectio Divina or to really do much at all. And as one of the brothers said, like his prayer is like, all right, Jesus, like you're going to have to take care of this one. And that I think is one of the important lessons that Father Innocent wants to teach all of us about prayer, is that the primary protagonist and of prayer is God himself. It's not about us or what we do. or what we want it to look like, and to surrender and to be like, okay, Lord, I'm here and I am poor and I can't do what I want to do. You take care of this.
Yeah.
On the interior life and the prayer, it's really, I think, one of the fundamental lessons that he's hoping that we take away from that time.
Yeah, praise God. Okay, Father, just to wrap things up, I shared what I would tell my 19-year-old self. Do you have any insights what you would tell 19-year-old Father Mark Mary?
19, I would say...
You're not going to bowl a 300. Go to class.
No. I'm going to say you might be tempted to get a belt with a large belt buckle and to wear it back behind, like on the corner of your pants or your shorts.
Oh, goodness.
Don't do that. It's not actually cool, and it will never be cool. There was a thing. Do you remember, Punk'd, Ashton Kutcher, that whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
Von Zipper was a thing. And for skate brand surf stuff, they used to have these like belts with big belt buckles. Uh-huh. So they're kind of like Texas style, but they'd be like surfy. And there was like a phase for a little bit to wear it like not all the way in the back, but kind of to the side. I don't think that checked out. But what would I say? Honestly, it's a good question. It's going to be bigger and better than you ever imagined.
I think I've heard that before. Did somebody else recently say that?
That's what it is. I think the gift particularly, that's when I kind of started my journey towards the priesthood. And so I give everything to be a priest. And it's been even better than I imagined, right? It was what I was already willing to give my life up for, but particularly spiritual fatherhood is just a gift and in an abundance and overflowing in a way that's like concrete and satisfying. That's way beyond anything I would have ever expected. And so maybe just something about, hey, just first of all, just be a priest and leave that girl alone. And, and then just don't bring her into this, because that happened. But so leave her out of it and just stay the course. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
I just like sitting here, I just like feel excitement like in my bones for all of the like people here. I'm not that much older than most of you, but like you're just in such a like beautiful time in your life where I just like cannot wait to see what the Lord is going to do. So
did you just infer that I am a lot older than all of these people?
Yeah, Father Mark Mary is so much older than all of you.
I'm twice the age of a lot of people in here. That's
we're
funny.
Trying to keep him young. That's why we keep him around. Blessed is she.
That's right.
Well, thank you guys so much for hanging with us. Thank you to Spoke Street for having us. You can check out more of their podcasts at spokestreet.com. And thanks to Focus for, putting this all together, making Seek happen, for changing my life all those years ago. Not all those years because I'm not that old, but a couple years ago. Yeah. And continuing to, provide this opportunity for so many students. We're really grateful.
And thanks, Jenna and Beth, for letting us take over their podcast.
Yeah, thanks for letting the B team show up. We appreciate it.
Let's gather. Do they have like an opening line? Like abiding together is like, grab a coffee, welcome home.
I think it's pull up a seat in your heart, I think Beth says.
Thanks for letting us pull up a seat in our heart.
Something cute. And then it's like, hey, friend.
Yeah. Hi, friend.
So,
hey.
Sorry, we weren't as cute as they were, but they'll be back.
Cool. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks, Father. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. For more information on the Focus Seek conference, visit seek.focus.org.
This episode of the SEEK23 podcast was produced by Spoke Street. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.